Last question. Would you have any problems pulling the trigger on an enemy of the Brotherhood, whether they're human, formerly human, or machine?
Nope, no problem whatsoever.
Doing the Brotherhood's work. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this long-awaited episode of Larks, Lamentations. I do apologize for the time it took to get this one out, but after several technical difficulties and one fried PC, we are finally able to discuss Fallout 4's Brotherhood of Steel. So slap a fusion core in your power armor because we are headed back into the Commonwealth.
Hell, it's about time.
Let's get into it. So first things first, instead of doing a little bit of background on the entire world that is Fallout, let's talk about the Brotherhood of Steel, because the Brotherhood is probably the oldest faction in the Fallout universe, with the exception of maybe the Enclave. Way back in the year of 2076, the United States government began experimenting on viruses at Mariposa Army Base in California. One such virus the Eggheads enjoyed testing was the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV. The FEV is a virus that turns humans into super mutants. This is not a great start, scientists. You really should know better. But then it gets worse. They start testing the virus on American citizens. When the actual soldiers that were guarding the base found out what the scientists were doing, they started to mutiny. The situation was only made worse when the ranking officer, one Colonel Robert Spendell, locked himself in his room and refused to talk with anyone because he was in the middle of a nervous breakdown, leaving the next ranking officer, Captain Robert Maxson, to take charge. Take note of that last name because it's important. Anyway, Maxson started holding investigations of the scientists to figure out what was going on and to make the soldiers under his command feel as though justice was being done. When it came to light that the scientists were doing human experiments under the order of the United States government, Maxson tried to get answers out of Spendell, who had wound up committing suicide in his room via gunshot. Then Maxson began pulling the families of his men into the base while trying to get answers from the government. Maxson even went so far as to kill the scientist under his command.
Well, it's a small sacrifice for the greater good, son.
And began seceding, well, actually, not beginning, he threatened to secede from the Union because the government refused to provide answers. Then in 2077, the bombs dropped, and everything changed. Except war for some reason. You see,
War never changes.
yeah, why not? Maxson realized that there was nothing left for him and his families in Mariposa after the bombs dropped, so he decided to move everybody into a hidden military bunker in Lost Hills. While the soldiers took the long march and settled into their new home, a depression began to settle into Maxson's followers. You see, not only had they just lost faith in their own government, the whole world had just been destroyed. It does a lot to a man's psyche. Well, do a lot to anyone's psyche. To combat this, Maxson decided it was best that he developed a new ideology for his soldiers, a new order to replace the one that had failed them before. Maxson would found the Brotherhood of Steel. The Brotherhood founded itself on the idea that they would be like the knights and scribes of old, who kept civilization in Europe alive after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. But the Brotherhood's founding idea and philosophical drive has been to understand the nature of technology and fight those who would abuse technology for their own ends, just like the scientists at Mariposa. After all, Those scientists meddling around is how we got the Great War, right? Please ignore the political and economic factors that led to the war. Anyway, the Brotherhood didn't just create a new philosophy, it created a whole new military society with a very strict structure and hierarchy of rank. So let's go through it real quickly. At the bottom, you have squires. They are the bottom tier rank because they're just kids. Literally, these are kids that are born into the Brotherhood. When you are born into the Brotherhood, you are immediately known as a squire. Next up, you have initiates. These guys are the newbies in the Brotherhood. They are just getting into service and trying to figure out what path they're going to take in life. Initiates can either be squires reaching the age of maturity or people that the Brotherhood has recruited into its ranks. Next, scribes. At this point, you sort of see the ranks fork off. Scribes are one direction initiates can go. These guys are basically this Brotherhood scientists and engineers. They research, catalog, and invent new technology. If you're using a shiny rifle in the Brotherhood, odds are a scribe was the one that built it. Next up, if you choose not to go the scribe route, and you want to actually have more of a combat role, you become a knight. These are the main fighting force of the Brotherhood. These are the guys on the front lines fighting all the things that go bump in the wasteland. Knights can be promoted further into knight sergeant and knight captain, respectively. And beyond that, you have a paladin. Think of these guys as the officers of the Brotherhood. These guys tell the knights what to do while still fighting in the field. They are the toughest members of the Brotherhood, and they are in charge of its security. And finally, if for some reason you just become the best of the best, you are awarded the rank of Sentinel. This is the highest honor the Brotherhood can bestow. Basically, you're the best paladin around, assuming there is one around, because there isn't always a Sentinel around. Then finally, after Sentinel, you have Elders. These guys are the highest ranking members and they make all the big decisions. See, a paladin might lead a squad into battle, but elders run chapters. Then, beyond elders, you have a High Elder. This guy runs the Brotherhood in its entirety. He is supposed to mediate between the other elders, but normally a High Elder actually has complete control over the Brotherhood. What he says goes, because typically a High Elder is actually a direct descendant of Robert Maxson, and as a result, he has a religious reverence around them. Because, well, that's what happens when you become the founder of a new order. Anyway, ranks aside, let's look at the actual mission statement of the Brotherhood. Now, it sounds nice that, hey, we're going to try and understand and protect the nature of technology to protect humanity. Generally, the Brotherhood takes this to mean they should confiscate and control all forms of technology because the outside world just can't be trusted with it. This also runs into the issue that the only kind of tech the Brotherhood typically is interested in is the tech that has militaristic properties, with a few notable exceptions.
Get yourself a brittle water filter system.
They also have a bad habit of ignoring any problem that isn't of a technological nature or doesn't affect them directly. Regardless, after a super mutant war, a scuffle with the Enclave, and a brief war with the NCR, the Brotherhood had a sudden realization. Oh crap, there's probably tech on the East Coast too! Also, I know they were in Texas and the Midwest, don't have an aneurysm, I'm focusing on the main games, not tactics or 76, calm down.
You abandoned me!
Anyway, to deal with this newfound revelation, the Brotherhood sent a massive expedition out east to secure any dangerous tech and save the citizens on the East Coast from themselves. This expedition was led by one elder, Owen Lyons. Lyons is a bit of a controversial figure in the Brotherhood. You see, when Lyons arrived in Washington, D.C., he saw how bleak the situation was for the average person and decided the Brotherhood was going to make the welfare of the people the Brotherhood's priority, not exclusively grabbing tech.
Audible gas!
I know. How could he? He also started doing other ghastly things. He started recruiting people into the Brotherhood. Now, you might be going, well, why is that a big deal? Keep in mind, this is huge, because prior to Lyons, very few people were brought into the Brotherhood. Most members were born into it unless you were a part of the initial recruiting pool back in the days of Robbie Maxson. And finally, Lyons also got rid of the chains that bind doctrine. The chains that bind doctrine is an idiotic rule that means the Brotherhood members can only give orders to their direct subordinates. And if this rigid doctrine is not followed, the violators could lose their ranks. Let me give you an example. Imagine if a paladin told a knight that was not in its direct squad that it needed to get to work, polish up your weapon, fix a oil stand on your armor or whatever. That paladin could lose their job because they broke the chains that bind. Yeah, there's a reason why Lyons got rid of that. It was idiotic. Because in order to do that, let's say you see a serious problem, you would have to go through this rigorous chain of command. So an elder would have to go talk to a paladin, who would have to go talk to a knight, who would have to go talk to his initiate to tell them, hey, go get X done. So really ridiculous situation. Lyons was intelligent to get rid of that. Now, despite how these changes may or may not seem to us, they were actually really controversial to the Brotherhood. In fact, some Brotherhood members were so butthurt about the changes, they broke off from the expedition, just so they continue to hoard tech and not help anyone. Even 10 years later, after Lyons was no longer in charge of the Brotherhood, the members still give him crap about it for, trying to be a decent human being.
Proud to be serving under Elder Maxson. I had enough of Lyons and his foolish ways.
Don't worry, Lyons. We here at Raven Knight's channel will always love you. Anyway, after a war with the Enclave, that involves a water purifier and a democracy-loving robot, the Brotherhood secured control over the capital wasteland. With that issue out of the way, the Brotherhood started to settle into the East Coast. Then when Lyons finally passed, the last of the Maxson line, Arthur Maxson, would take over as the new High Elder. Arthur united the Brotherhood by returning the Brotherhood's attention to protecting technology, which made everyone happy, and which meant some of the previous deserters came back. However, Arthur is not a complete idiot. And so Maxson decided to keep some of the reforms that Lyons implemented. Then Arthur began expanding the Brotherhood's power, creating an airship that acts as a mobile headquarters and creating a new wing of the Brotherhood called the Lancers, who pilot airships and vertibirds. Arthur also decided that the Brotherhood had a responsibility to get rid of any byproducts of technology, which includes, but is not limited to, super mutants, feral ghouls, and synths. Speaking of synths, Elder Maxson also began sending out scouting teams to other parts of the East Coast to find potentially dangerous technology, only for the Brotherhood to discover the Institute in the Commonwealth. When the Brotherhood got word that the Institute was 1. Founded by a pre-war scientist, 2. Experimented on humans, and 3. Were creating synthetic humans, Arthur just about blew a gasket. And he decided to redirect the main force of the Brotherhood to Boston to take on the boogeyman of the Commonwealth, which finally gets us caught up to the 4th game. Now with that out of the way, let's discuss the Brotherhood in the Commonwealth and what they can do for the player, for you. Once you get out of the vault, the sole survivor can run into the Brotherhood relatively early on. After you clear out a few ghouls, Paladin Dance gives you the option to help out his scouting team. If you agree, he will offer you a chance to join the Brotherhood of Steel. Now, this raises a very important game-changing decision. Should you join this somewhat controversial organization?
Hell yeah, brother! Ad Victorium all the way!
The Brotherhood is by far the best faction to join, and you best believe I'm going to tell you why. See, unlike some organizations in the Commonwealth, the Brotherhood has a terrific structure and organization. Its leadership is top-notch. Arthur is a charismatic leader.
You couldn't get a better recommendation.
Lancer Captain Kells is a no-nonsense officer without being an ass.
You might expect an endorsement like that to grant you a great deal of latitude with us. But let me make one thing clear. The Brotherhood of Steel has traveled to the Commonwealth with a specific goal in mind. As the captain of this vessel, I won't allow anyone to jeopardize our mission, no matter how valuable they think they are. Understood?
Proctor Quinlan manages the scribes and pays you for finding random paperwork.
In any event, it was a pleasure to meet you, Knight.
Proctor Ingram and her team keep everything running and actually has a sense of humor.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Knight Captain Kate is the nicest doctor in the Commonwealth.
Excellent. You'll fit in quite well around here.
Scribe Naraya researches the enemies of the Brotherhood and provides you with the best anti-rad medication in the Commonwealth, and also pays you for collecting blood from your enemies. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. Most people don't appreciate the important work that I'm trying to do here.
It's also a plus that no one is waiting around to stick you with battery acid.
That was like 8 years ago, asshole. People don't forget.
Finally, we have Dance, the man who puts the brother in Brotherhood. This man is a soldier. He's great in firefights, loyal to a fault. He may come off as a bit as rough, but I love having this guy around.
It's been a pleasure serving with you.
But there's more to that. We'll get more to it later. But regardless, another thing to point out, unlike other organizations where their training is very much in question, Brotherhood soldiers are very well known for their training. They are, after all, a professional military. And another thing to consider is, you will always see these guys around. In my run-throughs of going through the Railroad and the Minutemen, I have very seldom seen Minutemen out actually in the wild. The only time I really do see them is if I shoot up a flare, and that's, probably about a 50-50 chance whether anybody will actually come.
No, cheesers! Coward! I gave you everything!
But, ever seen a Railroad Heavy out? Typically, if maybe they're dead. But Brotherhood? Oh, you can't miss these guys. They and their vertebrates will drop teams out of nowhere just to start sticking it to super mutants. It's beautiful. And of course, the Institute, you occasionally see synths, but typically if you see synths running around, that means there's probably a Brotherhood paladin of chasing them. It's amazing. These guys have a clear, direct presence in the Commonwealth. It is felt everywhere they go. And speaking of having a presence felt, they give you the best stuff. They reward you for your work. Laser rifles? Check. 2 sets of power armor? Check. And free vertibird trips around the Commonwealth? Check. Oh, and did I mention you get to fire a bottomless minigun when you fly? How do you shoot synth women and children?
Easy! You just don't lead them so much!
But that's small potatoes in compared to the missions. See, each faction has repeatable missions you can use to farm XP, but the Brotherhood has the best. Let's compare and contrast, shall we? The Minutemen, meanwhile, I love you, Minutemen, I really do. But you spend most of the game fast traveling to try and find Preston to tell him you're done just so he can say, hey, here's 3 more missions to give you.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. Go find out what they need. Go find out what they need. Go find out what they need. I'll mark it on your map. I'll mark it on your map.
Phone call, Mr. Plankton.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. Another settlement has sent word that they need our help.
It's not worth it! It's just not worth it!
The Railroad has you loot pointless caches and set up cameras. And the Institute is so far into late game it really doesn't matter at that point. The Brotherhood, on the other hand, you see those abominations?
Yes, sir. I don't want to. Understood, sir.
Literally, here's how the missions work. It's beautiful. Option 1, kill abominations. Option 2, kill abominations while you collect tech. Option 3, kill abominations and bring your kid to work day.
Squire will shadow you as you clear a location of those anomalies created by the bomb. Mutants, synths, and the like. The Squire learns from you, and the Commonwealth is a little cleaner. What do you say?
Well, hello.
That was quite the experience, sir.
Option 4, kill abomination while some scrub does the tech collecting for you.
Search patrol. I'm collecting data, and you're watching my back, sir.
Be careful though, those scribes can be a little fragile. Option 5, gather protection food from the locals.
It just involves a little bit of heavy lifting and interacting with the local farms.
Option 6, collect documents and blood samples while you purge abominations. Simplicity itself, you gotta love it. Now, hey, don't the Minutemen get rid of super mutants and pharaohs too? Yes, that is true, but there is a distinct difference. You see, the Minutemen wait for the monsters to become a threat before they act. The Brotherhood doesn't wait for them to become a problem. The Brotherhood realizes the abomination's existence is the problem.
Burn the heretic! Kill the mutant! Purge the unclean!
It's quite a distinction there. Plus, there's the beauty that you can do the Brotherhood missions on your own time. They ask if you'd like to do another mission instead of demanding you go ahead and do it. So, if you say, I want to take a break from some of these, I farmed the XP I needed, now I want to go do this, you're free to do it. They'll wait for you. The Minutemen, on the other hand, I love you, Preston. I know you need stuff done now, but I need a break from you occasionally. It's not, it's not you. Well, it kind of is, but it's me as well. Now, but that's just the repeatable missions. Let's talk about the main missions. They are, oh my gosh, a blast. You see, first of all, they let you eradicate the entire railroad with your friends. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean friends. I mean brothers by your side.
Soldiers, brothers!
If that isn't a good time, I don't know what is. Also, if marching to victory with a refurbished Liberty Prime doesn't make you smile cheek to cheek, please check your pulse, because you're dead inside. Okay, they're fun, Lark, I get it. But are they the morally sound option? If you have to ask that question, you're a filthy degenerate. The Institute are mad scientists content with experimenting on humans and kidnapping innocents. Also, they killed your spouse, and that's not an okay thing to do. That's not what Mr. Rogers would want you to do. The Minutemen are morally amazing. I love the Minutemen, don't get me wrong. But they don't have the effective reach of the Brotherhood. But bless them, they are trying. Or realistically, you are, because when you do a Minutemen run through, you're doing 99% of the legwork. I still love you, though. Don't get me wrong. I still love you. And then, of course, there is the misallocation of resources and priorities that is the Railroad. Watch my previous video on them to understand why. Now, the Brotherhood, by contrast, specifically hunts down dangerous monsters that would otherwise hurt civilians of the Commonwealth. They also eliminate the Institute like no other, because if you're going to destroy an evil organization, why not do it with an anti-communist robot? It's the only way to operate. So, at the end of the day, the Commonwealth is just better off under the Brotherhood. They are the most effective of the four factions. What? But how can you say that? They are clearly, hold on one second, I have it pulled up somewhere over here. Okay, well that dude is looking for the right buzzword. Let's talk about another plus of the Brotherhood victory. One, the Institute is now gone. No more sensor being manufactured. No more kidnapping people and replacing them with lookalikes. That's amazing on its own. But there's more. After the Institute is blown sky high, the Brotherhood takes over military checkpoints across the Commonwealth, further solidifying its control. Imagine if you're a raider who's traditionally operated in the Commonwealth. Which one do you feel more like attacking? A settlement that's guarded by a few Minutemen with maybe a turret here or there? Or a settlement that's reinforced by power-armored soldiers that can drop behind you via helicopter?
Let's see who we can find. Captain, there's a guy we can scare.
I had 4 biscuits, and I ate 1. Then I only had 3.
If you want security, you gotta go with the Brotherhood. That's just the way to go right there. And also, let's be real here, Brotherhood, they put humanity first, not second fiddle to a Decepticon or some technocrat's experiment of the month. If you're picking factions based on morals, you better choose the Brotherhood or the Minutemen. They're just not as effective, but if you go full Minutemen run through, I admire your work ethic. You are one dedicated dude or dudette. I'm not sexist. Now, with that out of the way, it should be said, I do love the Brotherhood. But with an organization as magnificent as the Brotherhood of Steel, it's easy to say there aren't any downsides, right? Well, okay, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't any room for improvement. For example, the Brotherhood does have a bit of a prejudice issue against ghouls and mutants. While I have no issue with the hatred of super mutants, minus a few on the West Coast, feral ghouls, on the other hand, deserve to be shot on sight, along with their super mutant compatriots. Now, regular ghouls are a different story. You see, I don't like the prejudice against regular ghouls, because here's the deal. Regular ghouls are just heavily irradiated humans. I understand there's the concern that they go feral, but if you have somebody watching them for a long time, there's less of a danger of that happening because it goes along with brain degeneration. But you see, regular ghouls can provide a wealth of information due to their long lifespans. Keeping these guys at arm's length, I think, is a mistake. Imagine how much more efficient your scribes could be if you had actual people that lived before the Great War adding on to your wealth of knowledge. Try and get to know these guys. Don't just push them away because they might snap and kill you. You know, it's kind of funny now that I say that out loud. Anyway, I suppose I should also mention the synth issue. This is going to get a little weird. Considering the hold the Institute has on them, I would argue it's probably in the Brotherhood's best interest to keep them at arm's length, if not kill them. Sorry, Dance. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but Paladin Dance, spoilers going on right here, heavy spoiler. However, it's been several years, you should know by now. Anyway, Dance is found out in the late game to be a synth. Now, he and everybody else is heartbroken to find out, but you have to go and put him down. I mean, you could argue to let him live, but Dance literally asked you to put him down, so who am I to deny a dying man's wishes? But But the thing is, while the Institute is still alive, keeping synths around is a liability because a synth could activate the recall code, they could be brought back in and reprogrammed and sent back out to cause problems. There's too much of an unknown factor and too much of a liability to keep synths around and to just treat them like normal people, particularly if you know they're a synth. It's too dangerous. But what about after the Institute's destroyed? Now we're really getting to a moral gray territory. The Institute can't control a dang thing if they're dead, but the Brotherhood will definitely kill any synth regardless of affiliation. But now we're delving into the realm of philosophy. Are synths comparable to humans? In my previous Fallout 4 Lamentations, I compared synths to the clone troopers from Star Wars. Chips controlling their brains, rapidly developed, the whole 9 yards. Synths clearly do have their own wants and desires. A case could be made to say they're analogous to normal people. So is it a bad thing for the Brotherhood to destroy them? Maybe. Fortunately, though, once the Institute is gone, the method to make synths is gone with it, and the fear of being replaced by a synth is next to zero, unless you live in Arcadia. So if the synths slowly fade into the woodwork or leave Brotherhood territory, they can live out the rest of their lives in relative peace. Then again, the only way for the Brotherhood to tell someone is a synth would be for them to test you against their DNA records they stole from the Institute, or to x-ray your head for synth components. So, odds are, as long as you're willing to give the Brotherhood a wide berth, you'll probably be able to survive them just fine. It's still a little iffy, I know, but honestly, I'd still rather live under a Brotherhood-controlled Commonwealth than a Railroad or Institute-controlled Commonwealth. But hey, you gotta have some flaws. They can't be perfect. But sadly, the criticisms don't end with just, a little bit of prejudice here and there. The Brotherhood also do have a bit of tunnel vision, and this is not just exclusive to the Fallout 4 chapter. See, I'm happy Arthur kept most of Lyons' reforms. He should have just kept them all. Lyons was ahead of his time. You see, the Brotherhood claims that they're trying to help the Commonwealth. And I believe them, but they're not doing a great job of showing it. Sure, they get rid of a few ferals and mutants easily, but most citizens of the Commonwealth really don't know that. And how can they? The Brotherhood actually have a no fraternization policy with the locals. That's just dumb. Plus, there are problems other than just abominations. The Brotherhood could use their technological prowess to try and help the locals and use their military might to provide further protection. This would win hearts and minds, but the Brotherhood is so exclusive and so focused on hoarding tech and blowing up abominations that they are forgetting the original reason they started hoarding tech in the first place. They're supposed to be helping people, protecting people, and while they are to a degree doing that, they could be doing a better job of it. But that's the end of the criticisms. So now we can discuss how to fix, how to reforge the steel. The first idea to fix the Brotherhood comes to mind is to have an alliance with the Minutemen. You see, the Minutemen can focus on protecting settlements with most small issues, but if there's a larger threat or issue of any technical nature, they could just call the Brotherhood for backup. Plus, the Minutemen can provide the Brotherhood artillery support, a steady food supply, and a potential recruitment pool. The Brotherhood often complains that while Lyons meant well, he was trying to do too much. Well, in this hypothetical alliance, the Brotherhood can focus on its main goal, while the Minutemen handles all the little issues. The other fix I recommend is the expansion of technological interest. One of the common criticisms of the Brotherhood throughout the years is that the most tech they are interested in is military tech. The Brotherhood, if they just had some scribes focus on tech that could just improve the quality of life for civilians around them, this would do wonders to improve the Brotherhood's image with the locals. Can you imagine how grateful people would be if the Brotherhood supplied your little town with, say, air conditioning and water filters? Seriously, guys, a little community outreach goes a long way. The more people like you, the more food they're willing to supply with you, and the more likely they are to believe you are the good guys you claim to be. But here's the deal. These changes would perfect the Brotherhood. But the Brotherhood is still already fun. It's a blast. So next time you boot up Fallout 4, pick the faction that cares. Fight along your brothers and learn to love the armor. And laugh as every enemy in your path is atomized. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.